I'll call this joint meeting of the Goleta Union School District and the Santa Barbara School District to order. And Dr. Cash will lead us in the pledge.
Please stand. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tenemos servicios de interpretación para esta reunión. Si necesita el equipo, por favor, haga una indicación. Gracias.
Thank you. We have hearing sets for those who need them. Just contact one of the staff members, please. Ms. Limon is going to be a little bit late. She's coming from UCSB, but she'll be here soon. Let's have an introduction. Maybe start at the far end and just introduce yourself, and we'll see who's here.
Corinne Azal.
Gail Idelson.
Richard Mayer.
Kate Parker.
Susan Epstein.
Ed Herron.
Yvonne DeGraw.
Pedro Paz.
Luz Reyes Martín.
Thank you. Are there any board comments or correspondence? I don't. If anybody wants to say anything? Okay. Do we have any public comments? No. Statement of purpose. Yvonne, why don't you start?
Well, I just wanted to express our pleasure at being able to meet with you at this joint meeting. We'd like to thank Santa Barbara Unified School District for the invitation. We know that our students experience their lives and their education as a continuum from year to year, so planning for their articulation between primary and secondary education is important to the Goleta community. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just say the same thing, basically, is that it's so important because we know that students from Goleta end up in our secondary schools, and to have that common thread throughout their education is very important. And so this opportunity for us to hear what you're doing and for you to hear what we're doing as a follow-up is very important. And it's been a pleasure getting to know your leader, Mr. Banning, and obviously you guys hearing from Dr. Cash. So it's just a great opportunity. We appreciate it very much. We have several items on the agenda that there are background papers on the our website, and I'm not sure, are there extra copies in the back for public?
Yes.
There are, so if you want, there should be extra copies. And so basically, these are not action items. You don't expect to hear any action from the group up here. We can give direction to our individual staffs, but basically we're here just to learn what is going on at the different school districts on different topics. Very key topics at the moment with the gifted programs, math programs, science programs, and technology, all key to everyday life now in our schools. So we'll start, Dr. Cash, I guess not, I guess Mr. Banning, Gifted and Talent Education Program.
We always want our guests to go first.
Good afternoon. I want to say what a pleasure it is for me to participate in the my first joint meeting with Santa Barbara School District. I understand they've happened before, but this is the first one. An ongoing goal for our school district is to pay continuing attention to the relationship between our two districts. We appreciate today's structured opportunity for dialogue and hope that meetings like this one can become a regular fixture of our two districts' commitment to collaboration, communication, and effective articulation between us. I want to just give you some background about our GATE program. I'll address the attached documents at the end of a few remarks. The first thing is a caveat to let you know that the documents that are included here are discussion documents only. They're part of a work in progress with us re-envisioning and working on our gifted program. They're presented here not as policy documents or final exhibits, only as a starting point for our discussion this year and evidence of the ongoing work in this area. Like everyone else in this state and nation, we're in the midst of refining our instructional program for students. While our attention to students who are working to master new standards or become fluent English speakers or to receive the appropriate services in response to specific learning disabilities remains paramount for us and for purposes of state and federal accountability, there is no longer such legislative requirement to serve our students whose ability and/or achievement places them on the far right of the distribution curve. Indeed, the categorical program we know as Gifted and Talented Education, or GATE, no longer exists, and the funds that supported it now live within the environment of local control. In the past couple of years, the Goleta School District has been examining our criteria and tools for identifying and serving our gifted learners. And we have been examining our program model and making some significant modifications in how we do business in this arena. This is definitely a work in progress, as I said before, but there are a few key components that are firmly in place. And I'd like to share with you some of those most significant changes and then give an opportunity for questions or dialogue. We have eliminated the use of criterion reference test scores as part of our identification process. At the turn of the 21st century, when the state began measuring progress toward new state standards in 2000, the CSTs, we stopped using norm reference tests, the CAT test. Remember the CAT 6 tests? And we migrated to CSTs, which are criterion referenced. Now, I won't go into details about the difference between criterion referenced and norm referenced tests, other than to say that it was never a good idea to use CSTs as part of a formula for identifying giftedness. We've migrated from using the OLSAT test as our primary identifier to using the COGAT test, which is the same instrument used in Santa Barbara Unified School District. We continue to test all of our third grade students with the full test, the full COGAT, and we've established a baseline for identification at the 97th percentile with flexibility related to subtest score, distribution, and other subjective factors. We have dedicated a full-time instructional specialist, formerly known as TOSA, to professional development in differentiated instruction and gifted services. She's in the audience today. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Joanna Lauer. Joanna is an incredible resource for us in this journey to reimagine our GATE program. We've begun a transition from traditional 1 hour per week pull-out services for gifted students to ongoing differentiation within the classroom. The model was introduced last year in 4th grade and is rolling up to 5th grade this year and 6th grade next year. This is the primary emphasis in professional development for teachers and is being implemented across the district with support from Dr. Lauer, school principals, and the Instructional Services Department. Another significant change is the way we are defining our intervention services. Each school has a learning center teacher assigned to coordinating and delivering data-driven support services to at-risk students. 3 years ago, we began training on an intervention model known as RTI, our response to intervention. This is the model that integrates multiple levels or tiers of intervention for students not mastering content standards in regular instructional settings. It's the model that includes student study or student success teams, and may ultimately lead to recommendations for assessments to determine need for special education services. What does that have to do with giftedness? In the past year, this RTI model has evolved into what is now called the MTSS, or Multiple Tiered Systems of Support. The main difference in RTI and MTSS is that multiple tiered systems of support incorporates response to concerns not only about academic challenges for underperforming students, but about academic challenge at all levels. You'll find reference to this concept in the forms I've attached for this discussion. So really what we're saying is the model that we used for student study team is on the verge of becoming a model that we will be looking at using when children who are highly gifted are not challenged significantly enough. So multiple tiered system of support is an expansive idea that covers the entire spectrum of achievement. So So let's just talk about the few forms that are here, and then I'm going to turn this over for questions or comments. And we have Dr. Lauer and Carol Boyan-Heldar, and Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Services here as well. The first, which is up here, is a flow chart. Again, work in progress, but you'll see the concept here of universal screening followed by other identification processes. And once a student is identified, these are the strategies, these are the things that are received. Differentiated instruction in the classroom, depth and complexity strategies, thematic instruction, enrichment, independent study at least one time per year, intentional grouping, target time. And then a constant evaluation. Is the student demonstrating the academic and intellectual growth? If so, yes, we'll continue to monitor. If not, that's where we get into this new concept of referring to the multiple tiered system of support. The referrals are not just for students who are not achieving mastery of standards. The second document is also draft document in regard to criteria for qualification, and you'll see the first criteria at 97% higher or higher. Renzulli scale is something that we are in process of beginning to look at this point, and then others as needed to qualify. This is here really for your reference. We won't take more time with them. Next document is a listing of universal themes. And this is not just gifted students. This is expected to be happening in every classroom, that the work that we're doing is based around these universal themes that can be incorporated into big ideas and differentiation that are appropriate for our gifted population. Next one is a recommendation for reassessment. This acknowledges the fact that any given test score or combination of items that are done at third grade may not be effective or stick through an entire career. There may be other factors that we need to consider. And so this is a form that we're considering to discuss how to proceed with reassessment if there's disagreement about giftedness. And then finally, this is just a reference sheet of some of the things that we would look at in terms of the reassessment. And the final document moves specifically to MTSS from giftedness, and this is a flow chart that says what do we do when a teacher is concerned about an individual student and are concerned about academically challenging him or her. This is the kind of form that wouldn't have included that last clause in the upper left box. I'm concerned about academically challenging a student. That's different than I'm concerned about standards. So this begins conversation with the teachers at grade level. It moves to teacher implementing differentiation strategy and other suggestions from team members. And looking at data as it's going on. Is the data showing that our strategies are effective? If so, we continue to monitor. If not, we look into this MTSS referral process. One of the great resources that we have is Dr. Lauer's work and her ability to come in when something is happening and say, what's going on, to support the teachers. This is, as I mentioned before, also the main point of our professional development right now is working with every teacher in 5th grade and 6th grade this year, last year it was 4th grade, to provide those strategies, and then with Dr. Lauer being full-time in this role, providing a level of support that can be called on in those exceptional cases. That's pretty much an overview of what I wanted to provide to you. I'd love to open it up to dialogue between you or questions.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Banning, for allowing time for discussion. And so I guess I'll lead our parts and you'll lead, that'll work. So does anyone have questions or comments about this presentation, about the gifted program in Goleta? Yes, Kate.
Do you happen to know the number of students that you have that are identified and what their demographics are?
So 10, is that in the 3rd grade identification this year? Okay, so
this is being videoed, so any speakers should be at the mic,
okay.
So we can.
Carol, do you and Joanna want to come up in case you can help with the answers here?
Last year, when we started our new system of just using the COGAT, we identified about 10%. I do not have the specific on the demographics.
Okay. And then just one other sort of question, comment, and that is I really appreciated you putting up the grade levels starting in kindergarten, because I think that so often people think about gifted children after they're identified as gifted, when really, of course, it happens as soon as they come into our school system. And so for TK and K and 1 and 2, before in Goleta they're identified, I love this MTSS. Are you using it down to that level when you see kids coming in at kindergarten that aren't being challenged?
Well, that is our hope, because right now, as we're putting a lot of our emphasis on the professional development with the upper level students, Joanna actually goes out and works with teachers who have identified students who we recognize need something beyond. And so by using this system, we're able then, our hope is that we'll be able to go through that process and really identify what the student needs in order for us to apply the correct supports or things that we think might be of assistance.
Thank you.
Joanna, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
I just might say that the list of characteristics, you're absolutely right. Those are shown in the home environment as early as 2 and sometimes before, so it's not something that turns on in the upper grade. But through this process, I've already been out in supporting a 3rd grade teacher who has not been through professional development and yet has a need, and been able to specifically address some strategies with that teacher.
Great. Thank you. Other questions? Ms. Idelson?
2 questions. One, so often parents feel their child needs to be tested maybe multiple times, and is that through these forms, if say a parent is just requesting for the assessment, is that enough, or does a committee have to meet for that?
We can have a parent request, and we're in the process of revising information that so the parent will provide us with some rationale why they are feeling that need. So it kind of gives us some help in understanding where the referral is coming from, and we certainly will retest them. One of the things that parents often want us to do is retest right away, but we feel strongly that we need to wait a period of time in order to get some valid results.
Right, and then a second thing is the program, as I'm seeing here, fully supported by district funds, or is there fundraising that parents do?
This is fully district supported.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Foss?
So when I say response to intervention, it's usually like about 3 levels, generally speaking. There's no set fat rule that says, oh, you have to have 3 levels. You can have as many as you want. Do you have specific levels for working with gifted and talented students at your school district?
Actually, that we are working on that right now in conjunction with our new MTSS model. And so we are aligning what happens to a student who does need more challenge or needs acceleration. We're aligning that directly with the MTSS, that even though you're still going to have a Tier 1 student, a Tier 2, and a Tier 3. And so the process will be the same, so that those students who need more specialized support as they go up the tiers, that will be offered.
And then sort of a question that you don't have to answer, it's more I'm thinking out loud. When you look at those models, one of the things that I've found, even when you look at response to intervention, the difficulty is that you're supposed to have sort of the inverse pyramid with, at the top having the most general students, and maybe not requiring as much support, and as you go down, you have a smaller population requiring more intensive services. What are you finding right now? And if you don't have an answer, you could just say, we don't know right now about that. Is that still holding true? Are you finding do you have more students at the bottom that need more support?
We actually don't use the inverse, we use the opposite. So we have the larger base at the foundation. And we do find that probably 80 to 85% of the students in Tier 1 needs can be met in the classroom. We do have students who need a little bit more, and we're hoping through our target time that model will help us provide that. But we do know we have students in Tier 3 who need some very specialized, but those are fewer students for sure.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
I'll just comment, for those of you like me who didn't know what MTSS meant, I did Google it, and you'd be interested to know there's tons of information on it. So I was very enlightened by everything I found and read as background for this. So it's a very interesting concept, and hopefully will be very beneficial. What I like about everything I see here, and this is to me it's totally different than when I started, is the emphasis on the individual. Each student is separate and looked at individually, which I think is a great change in education. And I'm very happy to see that that's the approach you're using, because each child is important. Okay, we'll go on to session 2. Dr. Cash, Gifted and Talent Education Program for the Santa Barbara Unified School District.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Herron, and welcome to Santa Barbara Unified School District board members from Goleta Union. Today, I don't know how many of you listen to National Public Radio, but there were 2 reports on gifted and talented education in the United States of America on the radio this morning. I found it kind of ironic that those would be reported on the day that I knew that both Mr. Banning and myself would be standing before you, along with our staff, talking about our own gifted and talented education programs. And one of the reports sounded very clearly and reminded me of a conversation that our district had about 3 years ago. And it was a report out of the Houston Independent School District about the cultural and racial bias tests that were used to identify and actually misidentify gifted students. And the number of really gifted students that had been left out traditionally for decades from the benefits of a gifted and talented education program because of their race, their culture, their ethnicity, and their having to translate a test that was predominantly made for white middle-class America. And so it's a conversation our district had essentially 3 years ago when we made a decision to recommend to the board a different way in which we would evaluate students for gate identification. And I'm very proud that that change has resulted in a significant change in the number of students who are identified as gifted and talented, and in particular their ethnic and racial identity. So with that preface, I'm going to turn it over to 2 people that know a lot more about it than me, and that's Dr. Ben Dradi and Dr. Raul Ramirez.
Just Dr. Ramirez is now in charge of our elementary school program, and Dr. Dradi is in charge of secondary. Assistant superintendents both.
Yes, thank you, and welcome, respective boards. It's a pleasure to be here with you. And we'll start with just discussing an overview of what our GATE program is in its current form. So at the elementary level, really, it's in grades 3 through 6 that we focus. That's post identification, and we'll talk about identification in just a little minute. But we have our Washington Magnet, which services students from across the district in grades 3, 4, 5, and 6, and that is our most intensive form of GATE support, and pulls students from across the district again. Traditionally, our practice in our district has been to differentiate according to our respective elementary school needs, and so every school, every elementary school has a description of its program model, and that is published on our website as well. In grades 7 through 12 at the secondary, the pathways look a little bit different, and we focus primarily on differentiation and rigor through honors classes, math enrichment. Also, we have a compaction option at both the junior high and high school. And of course, we have our advanced placement, international baccalaureate, and dual enrollment with primarily with SBCC, but it's open to dual enrollment with at the high school level with participating colleges.
Good evening, Governing Board members from Goleta Unified School District and Santa Barbara Unified. Dr. Cash mentioned earlier in his intro that we had some conversations as a district in terms of the placement or identification process for our GATE students. From there, several changes occurred that we thought were in the best interest of all of our students. One of which was that all students would be assessed during the second grade. And then from there, we would assess students from 3rd through 5th grade with the COGAT. And I believe right now all unifieds that feed into Santa Barbara Unified School District secondary are on the COGAT, which is something that's that's very welcome, but Santa Barbara Unified. Also, in grade 6, we do assess students with a different variation of the COGAT. And this is because we needed to really identify specific subject areas that students may have strengths in. The assessments in 2nd through 5th grade is more or less general. And so as students transition from 6th to 7th, we need to actually identify where students that we might have missed along the way that have a talent in or cognitive abilities in specific subject areas. So that was, so as a district, we go out in all the unified school districts that feed into Santa Barbara Unified and actually administer that assessment. In terms of placement into 7th through 12th grade, Dr. Ramirez mentioned that we have several programs in the secondary that support our gifted and talented students. We have honors courses, advanced placement courses, international baccalaureate courses, and also our dual enrollment courses. So we consider those are courses that support students that need to be enriched, and also support our GATE identified students. So from 7th grade, there is a placement test at the 6th grade to help us identify student strengths. In the past, we've used a CST. Obviously, CST results were not around for a couple of years. So the districts work together to really develop some assessments in English language arts and math that they would administer to all students. And from there, they would use it as a one dipstick in a larger conversation of other dipsticks to identify students that need to go into honors courses at the junior high. Once at the junior high, once they're in 7th grade, and from 7th grade to 12th grade, we monitor them, we look at their grades, we communicate with teachers to really support students, and we challenge students to take the most rigorous courses. So students that were not even identified as GATE that have abilities that we recognize and need more enrichment, we support. I want to piggyback on something that Dr. Cass mentioned in terms of who has access to rigorous courses. And obviously, we know that assessments can be biased, and that's why we had the conversation. One of the results of our conversation about ensuring that we provide opportunities for all students is we partner with an organization called Equal Opportunity Schools. And Equal Opportunity Schools' mission is to help school districts and school sites identify students that fit the profile of students that are already in advanced placement courses that they somehow missed. So it comes from the back end. It comes from the back end and evaluates students are in the program. They identify cognitive abilities, interests, some emotional intelligence information, and they assess grit. And then they compare the students that are in the advanced placement courses with the general student population, and they identify students that meet the same profile, and that's how we identify students that we might have missed through the assessment system. It's been very we implemented that for the first time last year. It's very successful. So this year's high schools, we've invited over 200 students, 200 to 300 students that actually are in advanced placement courses that fit the profile of students that were in there already. With that said, I'll pass it on to Dr. Ramirez to talk about the next slide.
So again, in terms of identification, currently in our schools, we have in grades 3 through 6, 337 students identified as GATE. And just to give you a little bit of a historical perspective, this past year, in 2015, we had a total of 864 students participate in the assessment, the universal screening. Of those, there were 43. And we focus very heavily on language as being a factor for us, something that we need to really account for. This year, there were 43 identified students who have been classified as English only, and 43 that are classified as English learners. So this is, again, to take a little bit of a historical perspective, has been a significant shift over the years in ensuring that language bias is not, or is mitigated through the assessment system and through the evaluation system.
I'm sorry, Dr. Ramirez, just for some historical context, 5 years ago there were 2 English learner students identified as GATE.
In terms of secondary enrollment, we, again, in honors, AP, IB, and dual enrollment, we have our grades 7 through 8, we have well over 1,500 students, and in 9 through 12, over 4,100 students. And we can attribute the increases as we go along to having a more, shall we say, robust view of enrichment, of having a more inclusive view of capacity, and really thinking through what potential and abilities meet. So this is something that we're very, very proud of, because it reflects very much on our deliberate efforts to expand offerings, but also to expand our lens in how we identify students for enrichment opportunities.
We know that it's not enough just to put students in classes that are considered advanced placement honors, or so we have to ensure that the practices that take place in those courses support all students. We also recognize that students that are in these courses come from varying levels of ability, so it is very important that we provide professional learning to all of our teachers that are teaching our students. And we understand that differentiation, a class that is taught in a differentiated way is probably the most powerful way you can deliver instruction to the students. So for the last 5-6 years, we have sought the services of University of California, Santa Barbara certificated GATE program, in which our students, our teachers attend the program, and it's several weeks of training, and they get a GATE certification. So the focus a lot in these courses are the understanding of having a fixed and growth mindset for the teacher as well as the student. So how to, the idea being that we want our students and teachers that are engaged in learning in the GATE classes or in honors and advanced placement courses have a growth mindset. And it's a philosophical shift in how we approach instruction. And we feel that it's a hallmark of having is a hallmark of having plans to be able to have a differentiated class. We also, outside of the GATE certificate classes, we also sought the services of Dr. Sandra Kaplan. She's the leading professor at University of Southern California that focuses on differentiation and mindset theory. So we have engaged in professional learning from her organization for the last 3 years. So all of our teachers, I believe we have over 40 to 50 teachers that have engaged in that service, and we will continue to engage her services. Again, Equal Opportunity Schools is also a program we will continue to support because we feel that it is probably the strongest indicator of who should be in these courses. With that said, we'll leave it up to questions. We have one of our teachers who is a teacher on special assignment, Sandy Robertson, here with us. So if there are some other technical information you need in terms of what she brings to the table in terms of professional learning, she's able to answer those questions as well. But right now, we'll leave it up to you to ask us some questions.
Thank you. Questions? Yes, Mr. Meyer. Dr.
Press the button, right?
Yes.
I learned that. Excellent. Obviously, one of the issues, of course, that I think we're all interested in is articulation. I'm just wondering if there are any problem areas we should be aware of, and how can we improve the articulation between 6th grade students in Goleta and 7th grade students in the Santa Barbara district?
I think you guys, Goleta Unified School District, by utilizing the COGAT starting this year, is probably the most powerful gesture of that right now. And I think we are more than ready to continue to collaborate with the assistant superintendents from Goleta Unified School District. And in fact, Dr. Ramirez and I met with your assistant superintendent last week to talk about possibilities of further engagement, not only in the GATE services, but also in English language arts, math, and other subject areas.
So the 6th grade test, is that given in Goleta schools as well?
Yes.
The test
yes.
that's for 7th grade?
Yes. So we will go out to Goleta Unified, Montecito Unified, Hope to administer the assessment.
Great. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
It sounds like both school districts have made significant changes in the GATE program in the last few years. And one thing that would be interesting to explore is how we'll measure the success of those changes. We can look at participation rates, but I think it'd be also interesting to look at, how these students do some years out. So if we're changing the model, one thing we've talked about in our district and is in our strategic plan is that we want to see each child demonstrate at least 1 year's worth of growth every year. So whether they come in, somewhat below grade level or above grade level, by the end of the year they should have grown at least a year. As you move up into the secondary district, how do you measure the success of students in the GATE program?
Yes, we also use assessments. Our LCAP matrix lends itself to that. So as we, some of the one of our metrics in LCAP is participation of students. So that's a measure that we look at. We also look at grades, grade point average, and assessment results, SBAC and other assessment results.
But we'll also, I'll interrupt, I'm sorry, we'll also be looking at the number of students in advanced placement, the number of students in IB, dual enrollment, and importantly for us, who those students are. And then we have written into our metric, our assessment plan and our LCAP, that what we're really looking for is a 3 or above on the AP, 4 or above on the IB, 1,500 on the, we have some pretty specific numbers, and we'll be looking at those as kind of what our passing grade will be. But again, important for us, have traditionally had very high scores as compared to our county and the state in those areas, but have also had traditionally significant subgroups unrepresented in those high scores. And so for us, that's a big part of what we're doing, raising the ceiling and the floor and working hard on getting every kid to where they need to be. I really liked, I think what Ed said in response to your presentation was that the focus on each individual student, that was very clear. And I hope that you're getting that from us as well, because that clearly is our focus, is looking at every kid. So.
Great.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, I was really happy to see a few years back when your district decided to test every student, because I think that's a much better model than doing it by referral only. Sandy's here, so I just wanted to give a shout out. I got an email that you have Jim Webb coming to speak. I think maybe this was from Tri-County Gate. This is Tri-County Gate, so Jim Webb is going to be speaking in October sometime, and I don't have the date handy, both at the Knox School for Parents and... I'm so sure. And then somewhere in our district. Is it at our district board room?
Yes, if I may just go back to Ms. Epstein's comment, though, about the success and how we measure it. I can't help but point out that in this room are 2 students, graduates of Santa Barbara Unified School District, who were in my GATE class when they were in 7th grade. Ms. Limon, I'm so happy to see you here, and a relatively new employee of our district, Mr. Brian Rouse. So I admire the way that they went out into the world and are participating in education. That's what we need, are those students in education, not just in STEM jobs as well. Yes, we have a long-standing relationship with Goleta Union, and those of us who've been around for a while have worked for many years with teachers. We've done workshops together. The GATE certificate program has been in place a long time. And so what question am I answering? I got myself off track.
Jim Webb.
Jim Webb.
Yeah.
Tri-County GATE. We belonged to Tri-County GATE for many years. And when I sent out the email to our teachers in the secondary district announcing him, I immediately, within 5 minutes, got an email back from a teacher at Goleta Valley Junior High who said, she's a teacher and a parent, she said, Dr. Webb changed my life as a teacher and a parent because of his focus on meeting the social emotional needs of our gifted students. So yes, Tri-County GATE is sponsoring him. In fact, Dr. Lauer helped us get Kellogg in the afternoon, 3:45 to 5 is for teachers, and he'll be at the Knox School, which is housed at the Unitarian Church, from 9 to 10:30 for parents. So no charge. Donations are always welcome, but no charge for those events. So we've always had a strong focus not just on the intellectual development of our gifted and talented students, all students too, of course, but the special needs of those students through Tri-County GATE and through our own individual offices. Thank you for reminding us of that.
I'm sorry, can you say what was the date?
October 8th.
October 8th.
Yes. You didn't get my email?
I did. I didn't memorize it.
How long have we been testing sixth graders at the feeder schools?
Forever.
Since testing was implemented, probably in the late mid-80s.
But we have the additional testing for placement in math and English language arts has been 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Do we notice any big differences or any surprises in the different groups of people, of students?
No, we haven't noticed too many differences. Like I said, the biggest equal opportunity school is probably the program that we actually see where we actually have missed students. So that's a very important program that we have.
Well, thank you very much. We'll go to item 3, mathematics, Santa Barbara Unified, and I also believe that Goleta will have information on that also.
Mr. Bill Banning is going to go first.
We don't have a formal presentation around mathematics, but I wanted to give you a brief summary of the trajectory that we've followed in the last couple of years in regard to implementation of the new California standards. Last year, teachers in our district worked from a grade level specific math learning plan that was sequenced through, that sequenced the new standards through the year. This was put together by our instructional specialist then, TOSA Anna Scharfeld, to combine several different documents to create a sequence that could be used at every grade level. Teachers had access to materials from previous adoptions and open source Common Core lessons like Engage New York and Georgia Math. We used an online system called EdCaliber that basically aggregated those resources together. They also had the support of 3 TOSAs, now called instructional specialists. The year-long math learning plan was created, I already said that, created by Anna. Professional development and new instructional strategies that supported the Common Core mathematical practices were a focus on our professional development for the last 3 or 4 years. Also last year, the district implemented a comprehensive review of published math materials that align with the new California standards. Each school participated in pilots and selected programs, and the board last year adopted 2 programs before the end of the year. This year we are implementing Bridges to Mathematics in grades K through 5 and Core Connections, Course 1 in grade 6. The implementation of the programs is the primary focus of Instructional Services Department this year. Every principal, 2 instructional specialists working to support this implementation. Both of these adoptions or programs are published by nonprofit organizations. Bridges is a product of the Math Learning Center, or MLC. MLC was founded by a professor of mathematics at the University of Oregon and the math specialist in the University of Oregon's Department of Education, along with a curriculum director from the Beaverton School District. Core Connections is published by College Preparatory Math, or CPM. We'll refer to this program as the CPM program. It began as a grant-funded mathematics project in 1989 to write textbooks to help students understand mathematics and support teachers who use these materials. CPM is now a nonprofit education consortium that's managed and staffed by middle school and high school expert math teachers that offers complete mathematics program for grades 6 through 12. And so we have those two adoptions. I just wanted to tell you that I've been around through several math adoptions in my career in public education, and I have to say the process of piloting looked pretty much like it has. We had teachers going through up to 3 different programs in a semester, comparing the content. And what's really different is not piloting, but it's what we're seeing now is the almost universal positive response from our teachers to the organization and the content of these adoptions. In the last several weeks, Carol and I have been walking through classrooms, looking at how math is being implemented. We're talking to teachers and we're talking to our instructional specialists. And the word on the street is that they are thrilled to have these adoptions, and they're getting past the point of early year, how do I organize this? How do I get it ready? And they're starting to dig into the deeper portions of how do we make this work? How does instruction really reflect the standards, and how can I differentiate it? I don't believe I've ever seen clearer evidence of the dedication and passion of our teaching staff and of public educators in general than the grit and persistence and the growth mindset that they, the teachers, are demonstrating in this exceptionally difficult and critical work. They are immersed in the shift to instructional pedagogies and content standards, and doing so in a manner that is really inspiring. So an opportunity for me to give you this brief background and also put a shout out to the incredible work that's being done by our teachers on the ground with students. It's very impressive. Those were my comments. If there are any questions about our adoption or anything, we can do that.
Okay. I want to take I never like to pass up an opportunity to also give a shout out to our teachers. I was on the committee that was doing the piloting, and just how many teachers were on that committee? It was like 40 or 50 or something like that.
Close to 60
We had
teachers.
60 teachers who were piloting 2 or 3 curriculums, not to mention going through Engage New York, which was also new to them that year. And so it was amazing how much dedication and how much time they put into that program. So I wanted to open that up for other questions and comments.
You mentioned teachers and students and staff. What about parents? How are they reacting?
In general, I think that as they're understanding it more and more, they are appreciative. Their kids are coming home engaged. Carol or Joanna, do you have anything to add to that? I'm not hearing anything other than positives. No?
If you'd like to say something, come up to the microphone.
I would just like to say that last year we held some parent nights that talked about Common Core standards and what was involved and the level of rigor and things like that. So I think parents have seen this as a nice process of moving into the new adoption. So they're understanding some of these changes, I think, because we had some standards nights to try to explain some of the new applications that students would need to do. So I think that's been helpful in moving to the new adoption.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
Thank you very much. Dr. Cash, how about mathematics in Santa Barbara Unified School District?
Yeah, we're continuing to offer math in the Santa Barbara Unified. I think if I was to have a conversation about our decision-making process here in the TK through 6 environment in math, it would take a longer time than we have. But we have our presentation focused on our 7 through 12 math program. And one of the greatest things that and frankly, it's true, and I think most all of the Santa Barbara Board would agree, that happened to our district was the creation or recreation of our teacher on special assignment position and taking advantage of some really smart teachers to become teacher leaders in our district. And 2 of them happen to be math teachers in our district, one from San Marcos High School, Dr. Craig Schneider, and one from La Cumbre Junior High School, Janet Hollister. Just godsend for us, and I believe Dr. Snyder is going to, is he going to lead this presentation along with Janet Hollister? So.
So, thank you for inviting us up once again to talk to now both districts about Common Core Math in Santa Barbara Unified. This is really, as I'm sure all of you are aware, it's really a new destination for mathematics, TK-12 mathematics, because we're trying to get kids college and career ready, and that there's a new definition of that. And with the help of both strong teacher leaders in our school district and community folks within the Santa Barbara, Goleta, Montecito community, whether it's other teacher leaders, folks at UCSB, we're really trying to get a good sense of what it means to support all kids to be college and career ready, particular to mathematics. So it is a new destination. This is huge for our kids, and particularly our teachers, that Common Core is helping folks realize mathematics is changing the focus from having mile wide, inch deep, to a much more in-depth focus of math content, a coherence that goes from TK all the way through to college, and then a level of rigor being redefined possibly for folks to have a balance of conceptual, procedural, and this notion of application, which I think is something many of our teachers through professional learning are realizing. The importance of application in mathematics is not just doing the word problems. And so we will talk a little bit more about that in this presentation. And we will also be doing a little bit of skipping through some slides as well, so we'll let you know that.
Yeah, so Common Core standards for math have 2 parts to them that we've been focusing on. We've been focusing on this bottom piece of the content standards, which are defined by grade level, so kindergarten standards, 1st grade standards, 7th grade standards, are defined by grade level. And up at the top you see these mathematical practices that are really something that's new with Common Core, that we've had a focus on math content in the past, but the reasoning part, those math practices up at the top are something that's new, and they span from kindergarten through 12th grade. And oftentimes when people look at those, just if it's a lay person reading those, they look at them and they say, those are things that I do in my own life. Those are make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. Number 3, constructive viable argument. And so we've been working with teachers not only about what do students need to know, but how are they engaging with math in a different way. It's not just about coming up with an answer. It is about being able to do all of those things up there. And I would call your attention to number 4, which is model with mathematics, because Craig was talking about this piece of conceptual understanding, procedural skill and fluency, and application. The application might look a little bit different than we've seen it in the past in terms of word problems, but everyone is coming to understand what that math practice number 4 means to model with mathematics. So high school has not grade level standards. They have here's all the standards for high school, and we've had to go through this process of what are we going to teach in 9th grade, what are we going to teach in 10th grade, because they were not parceled out for us by grade levels. We had to go through that process of understanding it. But that down here at the very bottom, you see that modeling is actually an entire conceptual category. So across things that look familiar, number and quantity, algebra, functions, geometry. Statistics is a bit new for 9th, 10th, and 11th graders to be engaging in that math content. But across all of those pieces, students need to be engaged in math modeling. It's a math practice that starts in kindergarten, yet in high school it takes on a much more elevated status. And so people think of application as word problems. A word problem might be, I have a flight at 10 o'clock, I'm leaving at 8, the distance is this, the time is that, am I going to make my flight? That's a word problem. You're given all of this information and you have to find an answer. Math modeling is much more sophisticated and challenging. It's much more connected to what people do in the real world. I have a flight at 10. That's math modeling. I have a flight at 10. What are all the things that you have to come up with? The information is not provided to you, but you have to come up with these questions. I have to check in this much before. Am I going to check a bag? How bad is traffic? So for people in high school trying to understand what this math modeling is and what the level of depth and complexity is in terms of math modeling is something that it's going to take us time to figure out how to engage students in this word that is applications that people take as problem solving, yet is definitely really different than just word problems.
And something to add to that is the notion of modeling, the rationale for it is, I mean, math has always had word problems, but the reality is modeling is something that everyone does, everyone needs. Whether you are a doctor and you have data that you're trying to make sense of for a patient, whether you're a scientist or an engineer, you're certainly creating mathematical models, but the example that Janet just gave, you're dealing with your finances at your house, you're collecting information, and modeling in a math world is to say, I see a situation, a real world situation, and I'm going to mathematize it. I'm going to think about this situation in a mathematical way, do some analysis with it, and then apply it back to the real world to say, does it make sense? And it doesn't mean that just because it makes sense in a math way that that's the answer. But that's what we need, kindergartners through high school students. That's what Common Core, a major thread of Common Core, and that's a huge shift for teachers. Professional learning around what is mathematical modeling and how do you engage kids from kindergarten through high school in that, because that's what our colleges and careers are asking adults to do. So that's one additional thing I wanted to describe about math modeling. So as Janet was saying, we did go through a big process 2 years ago about how to organize our higher level math classes. And so we got a lot of input from classroom teachers about ways to make sense of this large group of high school math standards so that it makes sense for kids going from an integrated approach from K through 8, because by definition, Common Core math is integrated K through 8. And then what do we do for high school, the first 3 years and beyond for high school mathematics? And so Santa Barbara Unified secondary PLCs, professional learning communities from junior high to high school, went through an analysis, made a recommendation to our school board, and our school board, I guess 2 years ago, adopted an integrated approach to the high school math standards. And so it was a great learning process for all of us. Thanks, Brian. And so that's several slides here related to that. Actually, I'm going to skip ahead here to, this is all around that idea of integrated high school mathematics. Something that's important for our teachers to understand is we're going to be assessed. Kids are going to be assessed in new ways beyond the CST. And so one of the challenges that our teachers are realizing is that Smarter Balance will be assessing all those math practices in ways that our CSTs maybe in name said, but really did not in practice. And so the depth of knowledge that students will be asked to demonstrate in Smarter Balance assessments for these 4 claims. You can see modeling and data analysis is a claim all on its own. The depth of knowledge, our teachers are going through a lot of professional learning around just how deep of understanding, how much depth of knowledge are kids going to have to demonstrate in whatever curricular resources you're using. If you're using just depth of knowledge 1 and 2, first of all, knowing what that is compared to 3 and 4, depth of knowledge 3 and 4, and what are the different types of actions and behaviors and practices are you having kids engage in? And so whatever curricular resources you have, you should be seeing students doing all 4 of these types of practices at depths of knowledge from level 1, sort of recall and remembering, down to level 4, applying and communicating. So I think that's something our teachers are going through a large amount of professional learning to have that depth of understanding about curricular resources. So again, this was a big conversation about which pathway for high school. And that sort of ends the slides that you have. I just want to say something else that has happened is that this is beyond K-12. So our universities, UCs in particular, have changed the high school A through G requirements for mathematics to reflect those math practices, the depth of knowledge that they know needs to happen K through high school, particularly in high school, so that kids are ready to graduate and be successful in a University of California system. The SAT has been revised. That will be launching for the first time this upcoming spring to reflect Common Core mathematics. And the fact that all of our state community colleges, California State Universities, and University of California system have said we, as a math community, need to ensure that all students graduate with 4 years of mathematics experience if they're going to be successful in a college environment in California. And that's something that is a big shift potentially for a lot of our students, is to do math all the way through their senior year, no matter if they finished their required A through G or even the recommended amount of mathematics, is to do math all the way through their senior year, because that demonstrates to colleges that you are going to have success in college because you didn't take time off of mathematics. They have data that shows when kids take off time between high school and starting college in terms of mathematics, that students have less success, not just in math classes at the university, in college in general. And so that is a big statement from the ICAS, the intercollegiate academic senates of those 3 higher education institutions. So and we can supply you that statement as well. So any questions for us or Dr. Girardi around mathematics?
Thank you, Craig.
Yeah.
Kate?
Thanks. I know it's been a ton of work, for the math teachers, for you, and I hope you're having a peaceful start to the year. One question I had specifically with this, that we talked a little bit about it when we were talking about gifted placement, but it's kind of broader than that as well, and that is the fact that you are testing all 6th graders across all of our feeder elementaries to look at math placement. And that is new as of 2 years ago, and I think that there's some interesting opportunities with that have come up, and I'd just like to hear more about how that's been going.
Yeah. It's definitely new to test all 6th graders in mathematics for placement. Some of the opportunities have been very helpful to, go ahead.
What's new in this process is that we're assessing everyone. In the past, there was the algebra readiness test that was administered to 6th graders in volunteer or teacher identify students. But we decided as a district to assess everyone, so that way everyone has the opportunity.
So I'd like to make a comment about that. 2 years ago, we tested everybody, and in this very room, we brought together 6th grade teachers and 7th grade teachers from Montecito through Goleta, and they came together, and we had a purpose of scoring these assessments, but an outcome that was not necessarily clear to everybody was the professional learning of a 6th grade teacher sitting next to a 7th grade teacher, scoring the same piece of work, having conversations. Do you think this is a 4? Do you think this is a 3? Because you'll find when, 6th grade teachers and 7th grade teachers might not have the same expectations for what sort of quality student work is. So that was an opportunity that played out really nicely the first year. Last year, we had some other logistical challenges, and we didn't have that same opportunity to have 6th and 7th grade teachers come together, but one of the pieces that has been nice is, in the past, we did have 6th and 7th grade teachers sort of calibrating expectations, and whether it's through a placement test or any other opportunities, I think that it's really valuable if we can find those opportunities to have teachers come together, because as we're all coming to understand what this level of depth and rigor is, we need to calibrate our expectations, because if somebody thinks that, you know, this is good enough and other people don't, we have to talk through what's good enough. So whether it's the placement test or other opportunities, I'd encourage you folks to think about how we can bring 6th and 7th grade teachers together.
Ms. Idelson?
Are you hearing a real sense of success in all of this, or more sort of the, because as a parent with kids in the schools experiencing it, I think there's a lot of negative, they're not getting it, they're feeling a sense of failure, and how are you perceiving it's being received by the students?
In varying degrees. I have heard some of those concerns. So I think the piece of grit is a different approach to our students. In the past, it would have been very easy to just get, when students take notes, they go home, they have the notes, and they regurgitate what they've learned. I think right now, because of Common Core, the whole modeling component, we're sending them home with the idea that they have to kind of wrestle through some ideas, come to concepts, and then bring back to the class and have conversations. So I'll let Janet and Craig talk more about that construct, but I can see where that could be frustrating. And I have a child, and I have 2 children in the system right now too. But I have the vantage point as a school leader here that's actually in charge of this piece, to go home and say, look, this is a part of the course. You got to go through, and I'm not going to give you the answer. Let's wrestle through it. So
I just pop in there because I've got grandchildren from 4th grade to junior in high school.
Yeah.
And it's the parents who want to intervene.
Yes.
I mean, and they're complaining, I don't understand it. There's no book. What page are you on? And I get all these things. And I've heard this not just from my kids, but from a lot of parents. I think we're very fortunate in California, because I think we have undertaken the Common Core far better than any other state in the nation. And I think here in Santa Barbara, we've been very fortunate also.
Yes.
But I do hear this, that the parents may be the stumbling block.
Yes, and that's a piece that we're constantly working on right now, to try to explain to parents what we're doing. The biggest component here, I think we can, the biggest thing we can do right now is really equip our principals, at least, to make sure that they communicate with the community members. Obviously, we welcome information that come to us, but sometimes it's specific concerns against it might be against a person, or an idea, or not having a textbook that they're used to seeing, flipping through is something that they may not understand. But right now we have our teachers use NEO, and the information is in NEO, is in NEO for them to actually access and have the same type of information, but they might not know how to navigate through that piece. So it's a matter of us communicating with parents, our principals communicating with parents, and making sure that everybody has access to NEO and they're actually utilizing it. And if they're not fully utilizing NEO, there are other avenues for communication.
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks. It's really lovely to come to a board meeting and talk about education. I have to say, this is very pleasant. I'm probably one of those few people who don't think Common Core is that much of a new thing. I do think our theme in both of our districts has been to help kids learn in a meaningful way, to be able to solve problems, to be able to make logical arguments. So Common Core is a slightly different language for, I think, what we've been trying to do for a long, long time. But be that as it may, I think we all can kind of get behind the idea of more depth, more rigor, not an inch deep and a mile wide, but going into some depth. But getting back to this mathematical modeling idea, how do we all want our kids to be ready for college and life. How do we know that? I mean, how can we quantify that? How do we know we've been successful? What are the metrics that you're kind of using to see if we're successful?
You asked a very complex question there, so I'm going to try to simplify as much as possible. Obviously, we have the Smarter Balanced results that you all have seen already, and that's what the state has determined that what is success. So in the report, you will see met on target and meeting the standards, not on target, and so on. So that's the summative information. I call that the autopsy.
Sure.
For autopsy at the end. So the students that have experienced that, there's really nothing we can do about them in that specific year. So what we have to do is really have systems in place, assessment systems in place, to assess whether they're actually making progress within that year, so we can intervene. One of the biggest things we're doing as a district here is we with the expectation that we have what we call a guaranteed curriculum. Guaranteed in terms of expectations, and the way we are establishing that is by having teachers communicate together and identify, say in 6 weeks, what they expect students to learn in first grade. They then together come up with some tasks that they would then say, this is after 6 weeks of study, this is where our students should be able to do this. From all the first grade teachers. They then go on, they all then go to their sites, and they backwards map from there and develop their lesson plans along the way. That action there in itself forces every teacher in that first grade to be focused on the same thing. Now, are they all going to get there? No, obviously not. There are going to be others that do much better than others, or students, so that's where the learning occurs. And we come back and have a conversation around what it is that students struggled with, and so on. So that practice is occurring throughout kindergarten all the way up to 9th grade. So that's how we guarantee. So there's 3 of those assessments our students are involved with, and then obviously we will calibrate those assessments with, say, the block assessments that come from Smarter Balanced and so on. So it's pretty complex, but there's a way to do it. But like I said, there's a lot of learning that needs to take place, a lot of things that we need to put in place.
Thank you.
Some questions.
Pardon?
I have some questions.
Yes, go ahead.
So I was a little surprised that the pathways document wasn't in your PowerPoint, the one that talks about the different pathways through the secondary math curriculum.
Yes.
And so I went looking for it on the website, and I had trouble finding it. I couldn't find it on the high school website, on DP or GB, or the district website. So luckily I had saved a PDF a year ago, so I printed out my PDF. So as far as communication, I think it's important for our parents, our 6th grade parents who are looking at 7th grade, to be able to see what the pathways are.
Absolutely.
And so I would like it if that could be more available.
Yes. So it should be in the course catalog. I'll go back and verify that. But you're right. If you're having that have a hard time finding it, then that's our fault there. We'll
And then,
get that
so
corrected.
just full disclosure, my daughter's in the compaction 7th grade class.
Yes.
And so I was wondering, there seem to be a lot more compaction sections of the Math 2, 3 pre-calc, 5 sections at DP, and 1 section of the 781 at GV. So I'm just wondering, what's the difference? Are we thinking that 781 compaction is so much harder than?
This is a good question for Dr. Snyder to answer, because I'll preface Dr. Snyder's remarks so he feels comfortable saying what I know he wants to say, and that is that there is significant disagreement about the appropriateness of a 7-8 compaction and its relationship to true mathematical achievement at the end of grade 12, and that's based upon our own internal data. And so, but I'll let Dr. Snyder talk about it, because I think it's important. You ask a good question.
So at the high school level, compaction of Math 2, Math 3, and pre-calculus is the original intent of that was as students make that transition from junior high to high school, which is a difficult transition for many kids because of various reasons, but one particular reason is just the academic changes between junior high and high school. So having that compaction available at high school at the 10th grade level allows kids to have a stronger sense academically of what they're ready for. It gives them a closer sense of what their future beyond high school is in terms of college and what types of career paths they want to pursue. Because the compaction of Common Core, whether it's at 7th grade or at high school, the California Math Framework really describes the importance of being very careful about taking these standards and doing what is truly needing to do, if you're going to do it, is compact the same set of standards in a shorter amount of time, rather than skipping, which from the state of California said that's what many of our students did, was they skipped lots of math at earlier ages of their K-12 math learning to get to certain places further along the trajectory. So they call it acceleration, call it whatever you want. California, the framework said, if you're going to offer that, make sure you are not skipping, so you're truly squeezing mathematics, 3 years of content into whatever time frame you're going to squeeze it into, to get more mathematics at a faster rate. And so that fast rate, that compression, was something that our math teachers in our secondary district said, that's looking kind of rough. That's something we haven't done. We've done lots of skipping, but we haven't done lots of condensing of the same amount of material into a shorter amount of time. And so allowing that to be at the high school level, more academic maturity, a better sense of where kids are wanting to head. And so at the high school level, it really is it's being made very obvious that this is by choice. If you want to go at that speed, if you see a certain outcome that you're hoping for by the time you graduate, this is a way to get there. At the junior high level, maybe there is less choice around that in terms of maybe kids aren't quite sure what they want to do later on, and that's why they want to sign up for compaction. So I think that could be one reason why there's many sections at the high school level and fewer sections at the junior high. Maybe there's a little more protection around who should be in that junior high compaction, because at junior high it's the same thing as at high school. It's 3 years of Common Core math content squeezed into 2 years of a 7th and 8th grader's academic life. So maybe there's a little more looking out for those little 7th and 8th graders in terms of math learning and compaction.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we get a lot of questions from 6th grade parents wanting to know what's the pathway and what should my child be doing.
7 enrichment.
Yes.
If they're advanced in math.
Yes. And so the numbers may be different because that third option exists in junior high, that enrichment component. So certain students are getting service through that enrichment, but that does not exist at the high school. It's going to be compaction or a general class.
Thank you. So the word parents has come up a couple times, and communication. So I know that when we made the decision, our district here in this room, we had the meetings, the binders for parents, and what I heard was that we are relying on principals to share this information. Are we doing anything else as a district to help the transition from 6th to 7th or in high school, in addition to what we've already done?
Yes, we meet regularly with the principals. Obviously, if there's opportunity to have conversations to go, if you invite us to come to Goleta Union and have a conversation with the board, we will do that. We think our philosophy is that the principals are going to be in a position to place students and have explanations or rationale why they're placing those students at the end of the day and give options. So we really encourage them and their counselors to fully understand the implications of what they're saying out there. In terms of putting things on a website and all that, obviously the district office can definitely clean up the aspect of it. But in terms of that personal one-on-one conversation with the parents or in a meeting with the principal, we think that the principal needs to be the leader in that communication.
And follow up, Dr. Schneider and Ms. Hollister, are you involved in any of that? Just because in my mind, I feel like you're the leading experts and you've explained it to us as board members in ways that I'm not sure I've heard explained by others and understand it differently. So I'm just curious if you're involved in any way.
Yeah, the first year they were, and they almost became the counselors of every student in Santa Barbara. So in order for us to be efficient, and we have to really make sure that everyone else understands that. And then because in the nuance of the day-to-day conversations with teachers and who belongs in what class, do we need to take a student from enrichment to compaction and vice versa, the TOSAs aren't there in that conversation on site, so the principal really needs to understand what's taking place there and really have conversation with their math team, math teachers, as they make recommendations to parents.
Thank you, and I hope that in the transition, if we find that there are, groups that still need a little bit more, that we would be willing to consider maybe some of the models that we used in the first year.
Something that we are doing very actively ongoing is we do meet with grade level teams of teachers who are also led by grade level principals, and so we meet with principals on a very frequent basis to plan those meetings, to discuss the mathematical shifts that we want to help our grade level teachers in their professional learning meetings understand as well. So there is ongoing work with principal, site leaders, administrators, and along with all the professional learning. So the professional learning is for teachers and for our site administrators, because I think what Dr. Dradi is describing is important, that if all of our folks don't have a working knowledge of that, then it is really hard for them to do their job effectively around mathematics education. And so I think that's something I wanted to point out.
Right, so I would point out that last fall at this time we did a big meeting at San Marcos, and so we don't have one scheduled for this year. Craig and I have been thinking about this sort of parent communication piece, teacher communication piece, instructional resource piece, and at some point in time we need to share with you the website that we've been building, because when somebody says, what is third grade Common Core about? How do we capture this professional learning that we did all last year and we continue to do this year? I think we need to share that, what is out there that we're using to communicate with teachers as we build our capacity to teach this. That I think that there's a lot of, I think that when we show you that, there's a parent communication piece in a website we're working on.
Yeah, when you see the website, you'll be very excited. I'm going to whet your appetite. It's on its way to a board meeting in the very near future. So.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate the presentation. We'll go to item 4, which is science of the Santa Barbara Unified School District, but I believe also Goleta will have some comments on that too.
Again, I'll be brief on this. I just wanted to say when it comes to our implementation of next generation science standards, we have a lot less to offer in terms of this other than the other topics on the agenda. However, prior to the state adoption of the next generation science standards, our district had adopted the full option science system, or FOSS, as our elementary science curriculum. We are using that curriculum currently. Our schools have all dedicated, every school has a dedicated certificated science tutor. These tutors create and present science lessons weekly to students based on this FOSS curriculum. Classroom teachers retain responsibility for primary instruction in science, and the certificated science specialists supplement instruction in lab or classroom settings with engaging hands-on activities designed to reinforce the core instruction from the classroom teacher. So just this week, we were walking through classrooms at one of our schools and watched a science tutor in the classroom, building on work in engineering that had been going on. I believe it was a 5th grade classroom. And there were kids that were building their towers with marshmallows and sticks of spaghetti. And so what had started off as traditional science-based classroom instruction became engaging activities. We heard the principal talking about the explanation to the science tutors, or the directive: go out, get on YouTube, find the most engaging things that you can bring into the classroom. And so that's a big part of what's happening with our science instruction. Now, for this year, we plan to have our leadership team and instructional specialists participating in 2 training sessions on NGSS that will be in collaboration with other local South Coast districts. And I just want to say I appreciate very much Dr. Cash's leadership and support in coordinating these sessions. We're looking forward to the first session on October 23rd. And we're also pleased to have other things going on. We have a cohort of teachers that are working with researchers from Berkeley on implementation of next generation science standards and standard lessons in one of our schools. We continue to encourage implementation of innovative science and STEM projects. Many of our schools have received grants from QAD. Most recently, the last couple of years have included 3D printers and activities around that. The most recent one is yielding a Genius Hour program at one of our schools that will be dedicated around science and engineering-based problem-solving lessons weekly. We have schools that are moving toward more complex and well-equipped science labs. And we continue to offer after-school opportunities with robotics, and we do coding even during the school day, during the annual hour of code time. And we're continuing to talk about how to integrate these things into the district program. Our LCAP goals for this year are about collaboration and discussion around NGSS. We have an opportunity in the second part of the year to be in dialogue with representatives from Bayside and Lawrence Hall of Science in terms of moving us along into this transition to science. For 2016 and 17, we'll be including research and planning on implementation related to next generation science standards, curriculum, and instruction. And then in 2017-18, we'll increase support for that planning and implementation related to next generation standards, and we'll be expecting to implement the new state science assessments that are aligned to NGSS. In the meantime, we still have 5th graders that will be taking this annual assessment from the CST based on the old standards, so it's kind of an odd mixture of standards and assessments that are going on. Clearly, we have a way to go in this arena, but the reality of current state testing and the capacity for system change all at once in so many curricular areas leads us to having to take a more nuanced, sequenced approach to change in science that will to some degree need to get in line with our math, ELA, ELD, all of the other adoptions. We can't do too much. We can't overwhelm the system, or we'll risk losing all of it. At the same time, we are planning strategically for a well-paced evolution, and we recognize the importance of alignment and look forward to working closely with Santa Barbara Unified as you finalize decisions related to sequence and composition of your secondary science education.
Thank you, Mr. Bannon. Questions?
I'll just comment. You mentioned the marshmallows, and we had an opening for Adams School Library and Science Room, and they were doing the same kind of thing. But the one thing I remember about Washington School, I've been there 2 or 3 times now, where they have all the classes meet together in the auditorium, and they do the same thing with a different kind of product, but behind the screen up on the stage, they have some science engineers doing the same thing. And then when it's all said and done, they come out and show what they did and why they did it versus what the kids did. And sometimes the kids were better. So, yeah. But it was interesting to see these engineers, what their mental process was in going through it stage by stage. It's a great...
So I see an opportunity for a whole new career for people to be STEM scouts. Anything else?
Okay, other comments or questions about Goleta Science?
Okay, Dr. Cash.
All right. Well, it's clear that those engineers hadn't gone through our system and had the benefit of Common Core math like our elementary school age students are. There's a lot of people in the audience here today that I asked to be here, and they are teachers on special assignment, and you've met our 2 math ones. I want to introduce some others that you may not hear from. We have Celeste Darga, who does English Language Arts and English Language Development in our elementary schools, and Dovis Zanias, who I can never pronounce Dovis's last name, who does 7 through 12 English Language Arts. We have Laura Wooster-Dorfman, who is our Restorative Approaches teacher on special assignment as well. And then I'm going to introduce to our board someone that they know and they've known forever as a teacher in our district and a parent in the Goleta Union School District and a parent in our district, Bridget Lewin, who has really shepherded our K through 8 science leadership and new science implementation along with the Lawrence Hall of Science. And then someone brand new in her position, a great science teacher, Nellie Hill, who is our current teacher on special assignment for NGSS implementation in grades 7 through 12. So I think, Bridget, are you first? Bridget and Nellie are going to come up together. All right.
Just to address the marshmallow thing. There is a wonderful TED Talk with the spaghetti and the marshmallows. And they actually pit kindergarteners with scientists and architects and engineers. And guess who built the highest tower? Kindergarteners. So anyway, we actually use that TED Talk with our teachers when we start doing science and have actually used that activity in our professional development as well. Nellie's going to start our PowerPoint.
Hello, everyone. I wanted to start with just showing you what the standards look like. In case you haven't looked at them, every time I find that somebody new looks at this, it's a little overwhelming, so I just wanted to demystify it a little bit. If you look up at the top is the main standard or disciplinary core idea that houses quite a bit of information. NGSS was built around performance expectations, which are embedded assessments of what students should be able to do. And these assessments are really fantastic because they incorporate the 3 dimensions of science. And if you've never heard the 3 dimensions of science before, they are right here. They are the science and engineering practices over on the far left. In the center, the disciplinary core ideas, which are more familiar content standards. And then cross-cutting concepts, which have, I think, some real similarity with the GATE icons of depth and complexity. And I really valued my training that I got through the district on the GATE icons as I was looking at these cross-cutting concepts. It really helped inform my understanding of these standards. Let's see. So I wanted to show you this. So as we go through some acronyms, especially next generation science standards, I will say NGSS. And you'll see on the slides the SEPs, the DCIs, and the CCCs, and the performance expectations, the PEs. I will try and use the full word. If I slip back into the lingo, I apologize. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Bridget, and then I'll come back. What? Okay.
It's a pleasure to be here to address both boards. I tend to talk too much, so I'm going to stick to my notes. But first of all, I just wanted to address what we're doing to promote and support high-quality science in Santa Barbara Unified School District right now. District-wide, for the last 3 years, Santa Barbara Unified District has been working with Bayside, who you heard about from Dr. Banning, to create a working science leadership team with a strong vertical alignment of leadership. So this science leadership team includes our board member, Kate Parker, our superintendent, Dr. Dave Cash, the elementary and secondary assistant superintendents, Dr. Raul Ramirez and Dr. Bendradi. It also includes 2 elementary principals, 3 elementary teachers, 1 junior high school teacher, and elementary science consultant. This year, we're going to expand that science leadership team to be TK through 12. So we are going to add on to the team 2 secondary administrators and 2 secondary teachers and the secondary science TOSA. So Bayside is from the Lawrence Hall of Science in Berkeley, and their goal is to systematically enhance the quantity and quality of K through 12 science teaching and learning in districts and schools. And when we were started to look at wanting to improve science in the Santa Barbara Unified School District 4 years ago, what we wanted to do was to find an organization that was working specifically with districts. And that's what their focus is, and that's what they do. Through the work, our Bayside, I will say, is aimed at improving the likelihood, and that's a word they often use, improving the likelihood that every student will encounter high-quality science experiences within a national and state context, surrounding the implementation and convergence of the NGSS standards and the Common Core state standards, that there be a convergence. So through this work with Bayside, Santa Barbara Elementary Schools are addressing the elementary science vision that the science leadership team wrote 3 years ago. And basically this vision states that district-wide, all students in the elementary schools will have regular access to high-quality science that develops their STEM literacy and scientific habits of mind by engaging in science and engineering practices, the SEPs, so that they can access the highest levels at the secondary level. So that's a vision. It took months to come up with that, and each one of those sentences has a paragraph that explains it. But it was real important to come up with what it is that we want to be doing. So through the work of Bayside, each elementary principal has used a district-level rubric to support, assess their own school's site's strengths and areas of needed improvement in science. So using this information, each elementary school now has a specific science site plan that explains what the intentions are for the principal to meet the goals at their site. These plans address leadership, learning and engagement, connections to parents and community, science and CCSS convergence, materials and management, other site resources, and outcomes. So we have 10 schools that we're working with. We have 10 different site plans for science, all focused on addressing needs for students at that site. However, there's consistency in using the same rubric when they developed that science plan. So there's both consistency as well as independent focus on each site. So at the classroom level, teachers are using their science curriculum to ensure every student receives high-quality science instruction. Professional development has included over the last 3 years at least 2 days of training every year for each teacher, connected with the science curriculum the teacher will be using to teach science. So for K through 5, this has included the full option science system. And I will say that that's often called FOSS. There's 3 editions of FOSS that I think are important for you to be aware of. There's a California edition, there's a 3rd edition, and there's currently an NGSS-aligned version for FOSS. The NGSS-aligned version for FOSS, if a teacher teaches the Earth, Life, and Physical Science modules from FOSS, they will address all of their performance expectations for their grade level in science. That's not true for the California FOSS or the 3rd edition FOSS. And so one of the things that we've been doing is to make sure that Santa Barbara Unified School District is using the NGSS-aligned FOSS, and they are to this, they are. Let's see. So what about evidence for high-quality science? Evidence for high-quality science is seen within student science notebooks and formative and summative assessments from within their curriculum. Oh, I will say that actually K through 5 is FOSS, and 6th grade is called Ocean Science Sequence. And Ocean Science Sequence addresses both the physical and earth science standards for 6th grade, whether or not it's integrated or discipline specific. The assessments that they're using in either FOSS or OSS are curriculum-based formative and summative assessments, and they are research-based, robust, and work to both guide teachers' instruction and provide summative data regarding student achievement. Next little bullet. As we all know, Santa Barbara County has a strong science community that has historically provided generous support in science outreach for schools. So through the science leadership team, the Santa Barbara Unified School District is working to intentionally identify and accept support from the science and educational community that supports the Santa Barbara Unified School District's vision for science. It's intentional and very specific to what it is that the community is doing to meet the vision for the district. And finally, we have annually teachers have been surveyed to provide data for the district regarding how and how often they are teaching science. This evidence has been used to adapt the rollout for science curricular models to ensure teachers are teaching the models with integrity. That includes completing the full module, utilizing the assessments available, accessing the technology components for students and parents, and using effective teaching strategies for all students. I would say all students, however you want to identify a student, this curriculum is incredibly suited for what I've recently heard with both GATE, with differentiated instruction, and all of our other learners as well.
Thank you, Bridget, and I'm especially thankful because I have children in the district, and I am thrilled at the FOSS education they're getting in grades 1 and 4 for my children. So going on to secondary, what we're looking at this year, we're a little bit behind elementary. We're being brought under the fold of the work being done for the science leadership team with Bayside, and we are at the transition right now of understanding the what of NGSS. So as you saw from the first document I showed, it's an incredibly complex system. It is fantastic, and I'm thrilled that we are transitioning as a science teacher and as a mother. I'm just thrilled with the learning that's going to happen under NGSS. So to help understand the difference, what does 3D learning look like? When we talk about the 3 dimensions of science, how is that different from what we were doing before? So the science and engineering practices, disciplinary core ideas, and cross-cutting concepts. If you look at those first 3 acronyms, in traditional science instruction, under the old standards, we were really primarily only looking at DCIs. We were really looking at content only. There was an additional standard for every grade level on inquiry, but oftentimes in the testing regime we were in, people kind of ditched the inquiry part of it, which was really tragic. So we had many great teachers doing wonderful things. I don't mean to demean anybody, but it was an add-on. And if you look at NGSS, it is not an add-on. Science and engineering practices are in the core of the teaching. So when we look at NGSS, one of the main methods of organization is by performance expectation, a PE. And those are the assessable components. And as we assess our students, as we look for student understanding, we are looking for an understanding of all 3 of those areas. And science and engineering practices includes modeling, which is also fantastic with the crossover with Common Core mathematics. So our teachers, our students, and our parents, we all need to understand what are the changes in content. That is one of the first steps to understanding NGSS. We need to understand what new skills our students need, which is going to be a process over time, and what new skills our teachers need. We're looking at a much greater student-centered curriculum as we teach NGSS. And then one of my big focus areas is what counts as evidence of student learning. We're not looking at multiple choice tests. We're looking for evidence that they are thinking in this new way, that they're thinking over complex ideas, cross-cutting concepts, that they're looking at modeling, that they're engaging with argument from evidence, all these really fantastic ways. And finally, on this slide, we are recommending, we had a long process of discussions with grades 6 through 8 teachers. It's the state's recommendation that the integrated model is adopted in grades 6 through 8. And through a long process with our teachers, the teachers came to the conclusion that the integrated model would be the best for our students. So we are going to be recommending to the board the integrated scope and sequence for grades 6 through 8, and I think that's going to be October 13th. So how will we reach our goals? This is the current year. Each grade level, grades 7 through the 3 main high school courses, we've identified 2 performance expectations for our district-wide meetings. So of course teachers are doing much more than this to move towards integration, but we really wanted to look deeply into a smaller focus area as a district PLC. So we're going to focus on 2 performance expectations. We're going to use the results of the performance expectations to drive discussions on student and teacher learning of NGSS. We're going to take a really deep look at what does it look like for your students of all levels, from English learners, any special education students, our gifted and talented students who also might be English learners. What does it look like when they are engaging in this type of science? And how can looking deeply at that work help inform our knowledge of what this new type of science is? And this process will lead to our understanding to build common formative assessments. So what about testing, the million-dollar question? So the CDE has implemented or identified 3 phases: awareness, transition, which is the current year, and implementation. Now, quite honestly, we're not going to be fully implementing NGSS next year, but I would expect the year after, which is not a problem. If we look at our testing calendar, we are well ahead of where we need to be. We're at a great pace to bring about really awesome change in science. Pilot testing is spring of 2017, field testing, spring of 2018, and the testing that counts, spring of 2019. So we should be, 2018 should, spring of that year will be our first year of full, I would say, I would expect all teachers within the district to be fully implementing NGSS for an entire year's curriculum, and they'll be in the second year of that rollout, the year we have testing. And in closing, so what does it look like in our classrooms? What are our teachers doing? Well, there is a mixture of old and new curriculum. We are not going to force everybody to change rapidly. We want the change to be comprehensive and deep. We're trying out new units. And in the spirit of innovation, we're really seeing that we need to make it clear to teachers that we understand that sometimes new activities don't go as planned. And a famous scientist quote, "Anybody who's never made a mistake has never tried anything new." So this is radical for us to some degree. We have different levels of comfort. But I really feel that we are being supported in this district to do things at a pace that is going to allow us to do things in a really thoughtful way. And this is a really important part of that. Thank you.
Any questions? I'd like to take the opportunity to recognize that Holly Gill played a big role in the last several years. And she's up at Stanford now, going back to school to get better educated and more educated. So we look forward to her returning. But I know she played a big role in getting to this stage, and I appreciate it very much. Other?
Oh, well, I know one of the main interests in our board's meeting today. One of the main interests in our board meeting today is articulation from the elementary schools to the secondary, and particularly in Goleta, since it's where we are. And you mentioned that there's going to be a 6-8 curriculum.
Yes.
And since we have 6th grade students, how do we best approach that?
Well, I'm going to answer that question because we have, all of the South County superintendents have been planning for about 4 or 5 months, and this is a process that we've engaged in. This will be our 4th year in which we've engaged in this process of working collaboratively. Last year we spent the entire year working on math, where we had instructional specialists or TOSAs from those feeder districts meet and then help our instructional leaders at our school sites understand what those new practices and skills look like in the classroom. This year we're focused on NGSS. I'm certain a lot of that learning is going to be around what 6th grade looks like, both in Santa Barbara and Goleta, and its relationship to building for 7th and 8th grade and then 9th through 12th grade. And it's a process that Bill described briefly that's very exciting for all of us. And Dr. Snyder also mentioned it in relationship to math, and so did Ms. Hollister in relationship to the common grading practices that occurred in We're hopeful that the work that we've done the last couple of years continues to build, and we see it in more and more things that we do, since we're really a small community and our kids go just about anywhere across our systems. So,
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have 2 more presentations on technology with about 11 minutes. So anything we can do to keep it succinct would be appreciated, although technology is huge.
just don't take the whole 11 minutes.
All right. I'm going to skip through some things and just tell you a little bit about where we are. We have started some tremendous movement with technology that is just really the beginning of good stuff. It's good for, I enjoy the opportunity to talk about this. I have some background in technology. I taught basic programming to students in 7th grade. When I was a principal at a comprehensive junior high school, I oversaw a large EETT grant for technology, and so I've always got my fingers into it. But what I'm going to say is that what we've done in the last couple of years is that we have put out incentives to teachers, innovative grants to say, tell us what you want to do. We budgeted enough money to give certain grants and find where the real passion is with our teachers, and then we're standing back and watching. And so I'm skipping through a couple of things, but just to be brief, last year a group of these grant-winning teachers and principals and tech support personnel formed a 21st Century Learning Committee, and I assigned our Assistant Superintendent Donna Madrigal, who is here, to lead this project. And she worked closely with the 2 principals, and they were charged with developing a vision and a plan for implementation of 21st century learning. Learning skills that included establishing standards for mobile devices. Now, I'm going to tell you, the last thing I would ever think as an instructional leader is that I would stand before somebody and say, I'm proud of developing a plan that was about defining what devices we were going to use, as opposed to what the standards, what the learning outcomes were. But the problem we addressed was that technology had been put out to our schools in a rather patchwork manner that was based on how much money a PTA could raise, where principals would get that, and there was no standard of what kind of devices are we going to use. So one of the big successes of that committee last year was to develop what is now our standardization of expectation for devices. And to be very brief with it, from grades 3 through 6, we're shooting to get to one-on-one implementation of Chromebook devices with sets of iPads available for more creative type of things. In the lower grade levels, at 2nd grade, we would be looking eventually at a one-on-one implementation of iPads and sets even further down in the system. I will say that my experience in technology has led to a combination of excitement about this for support moving forward with a healthy dose of skepticism. Skepticism about technology as a panacea. I think we have to be very careful to not imagine that it's going to solve our problems. But it is what the children need to have exposure to. They need to have these tools, and it's exciting to see one-on-one implementations in classrooms as we walk by and see what's going on with that. My comments were going to say that we got more and less than we expected with the process. The more was an incredible plan that defined all of those and brought forward a plan that's now in place where every school has 2 technology teacher leads that are regular classroom teachers who are doing extra hours to support technology, one at K3 and one at 4-6 at each school. And then the other more part is, as of a recent board meeting, our board has authorized the purchase of Chromebooks at the exact number that will give every 6th grader and every 6th grade teacher a one-on-one device this year. They've been ordered, they've been delivered, they're being put out now, and we're starting to see that. Chromebooks that had been developed or brought in prior to this are being pushed down into the lower grades. We're actually expecting by the time of testing that we'll be doing one-on-one in classrooms for 6th and 7th, or 5th and 6th grade, which effectively is going to have the window that we took for SBAC testing last year, because we required everybody to test in the lab. So in the end, or at least the end of the beginning, we've created a plan that has standardized our expectations for devices and grade levels. We've elected to plan for one-on-one distribution of Chromebooks in 6th grade. We're making progress there. What we got less of is really what the next steps are, and that's defining the learning goals. Because as I said, I never thought I would stand before anyone and say, I'm proud of the fact that we said this device and this grade level without having the rest first. But in this case, it made sense to switch that, and our next step will be to move forward with trying to define more specific and coherent learning objectives around the use of technology at various grade levels.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Banning. Comments or questions?
I notice you have keyboarding. Is that something new, or is that something you've always done?
It's kind of been to, at the individual school's preference. And we were just having some conversation recently about this. We have not landed on a particular system, a particular piece of software, and there's some arguments both ways about saying what are we going to use? Will we unify, or will we allow them to do what they're doing? I did go in and watch at a school the other day keyboarding that was going on with a 3rd grade class, or was it second grade class? That was an open source program that the kids were completely engaged in, and watching those fingers light up and using the home rows and stuff in 2nd grade, it was really amazing. So I do think that that's a critical part of it, making sure that if we're asking kids to do writing assessments and these kind of things on computers, that they have that capability.
Thank you. Dr. Cash.
All I know about technology resides in the mind of Todd Rickman, our Chief Education Technology Officer, who will, along with his dedicated team of technology coaches, of which 3 are here, will make the very quick 5-minute presentation.
I'll try to be as...
And that's pretty hard for you, Todd, so go for it.
Are you saying I'm long-winded? First of all, I just want to say that, like Dr. Cash, I'm the proud husband of a Goleta Unified teacher, and my mom taught in the district, and my kids went there, so I see the great work you guys do every day. So thank you. Thanks for employing my wife. So I want to go through, I'm going to try to blow through this as quickly as I can. I'll skip the pillars of success. So this is really a quote that's driving the work we're doing today, and it's innovators must consistently act different to think different. And we really believe that we need to have teachers act differently in order to have them think about their pedagogy in a different way. So we did some key things, thanks to our board and our superintendent, to really prepare for what we're doing in technology. And the first thing we did was we reorganized the district cabinet, making my position a cabinet position. We reorganized ETS. Dr. Cash and the board named technology as one of our primary goals for the district, and they have all graciously properly funded ETS. In the area of infrastructure, I think this is really key, because I believe that teachers need to feel confident that when they're taking risks, that the technology is going to work most of the time. So we spent a lot of time on the infrastructure, because there's nothing more frustrating to a teacher than to actually try something, step out of their comfort zone, try something only to have the technology fail. So we upgraded our with bond money, upgraded our network. We re-engineered our network, so every campus, instead of coming back to the district office, the internet traffic heads right out to the internet, so we increase speeds. Our goal is to stay 5 years ahead with our network infrastructure, and we installed HD TVs and Apple TVs in every classroom in the district. Teachers. So one of the things that I think is really important is that whatever we do in technology has to be grassroots. I taught for a long time, and there was nothing more frustrating than have somebody dump a computer on my desk and say, "You will use this," and send you to a couple trainings, and that was it. So what we've done has really been grassroots. We believe that teachers have to have some skin in the game. We did this, I could talk about this more, but we did something unique where we helped subsidize the purchase of iPads for teachers in exchange for them coming to trainings, which really created a lot of buy-in with our teachers. Our goal is to build capacity at the site, similar to what Goleta is doing, where we feel that teachers are more comfortable going to somebody that they've taught with for a while to ask questions rather than waiting for a district trainer or somebody from the district to come. And the thing that we've talked a lot about is that technology is just not another thing, like so many things that come and go in education, that this is not something that's going to go away. As far as our community messaging, this is not a technology, what we're doing is not a technology initiative, it's an education initiative, and I think it's important that we say that. One of our main goals is to bridge the digital divide. We really think that it's important to get technology in the hands of kids that otherwise wouldn't have an opportunity to have it. Technology is where kids live, Dr. Cash says that all the time. And that we want to provide training for our community members. One of the things is the more technology we roll out and make more information available on the web to parents, we don't want to disenfranchise a group of people who might not have the same access to technology. So we need to do community training and then survey to see how we're doing. So one of the things that we really want to do is, you guys have, I read, you're very familiar with the SAMR model. We find that as a great place, a jumping off point, but we really want to go beyond the SAMR model. We don't want our classrooms to be technology rich but innovation poor. So our ultimate goal is to fundamentally change instruction with truly innovative pedagogy. Getting technology in the hands of the students is only one of the first few steps in transforming instruction. So I'm going to pass this now off to Dave Lovejoy to talk about, one of our tech coaches, to talk about Allen November.
So Allen November has really inspired our district and me personally because he offers the viewpoint of allowing us to see technology not as a $1 million pencil or $1,000 pencil, and not just using technology to use technology, but now understand that technology allows us to do things that was never possible before. And in this way, we can now collaborate with each other, collaborate with people all over the world, and it's basically, if you look at all 6 of these, it's just a whole different way approach. It allows students to bring meaning and purpose to what they do. And so we are now integrating these transformational 6 into our PLC meetings and into teachers' lessons. So not all 6 would have to be integrated, but as long as they're thinking about this and trying to implement one of these into their lessons. So we really have an action plan in how this is being implemented.
So this is becoming, we're working on sample lesson plans, and we will see, we're going to ask teachers to include at least 1 or 2 of Allen November's critical 6 questions in every lesson that they do. Moving on, I'm going to turn it over to...
Hi, I'm Amy McMillan. I teach English at Goleta Valley Junior High, and I'm also a tech coach for the district. So this right here these are some of the ways we're supporting teachers. Really quickly, the iLearn workshops, we put on 1 a month during the PLC time, and we give them a menu of options. We survey teachers, what do you want to learn about, and we provide workshops for them once a month. And then we coaches meet with principals to support them so they can lead with technology and give them ideas of what they can use in staff meetings and so on. There's a blog that our tech integrators post to once a month, the iLearn blog, and they just talk about technology they've used and how it's impacting the learning in their classroom. And then the iLearn Advisory Committee, it meets once a month, and it's for any teachers in the district who want to come and talk to the tech team about their concerns so that we can really hear from all teachers and support all teachers. And so this is the map of how we're supporting teachers, and I just want to point out that every school site has, well, the high schools have 2 integrators who have release time to support teachers and to experiment with technology. The elementary schools have 2 integrators for each grade level, so across the district, and then 1 integrator at each junior high. And then after you're an integrator for a year, you become a mentor for another 2. And the idea is that the knowledge base and the leadership skills will spread out through all the schools, and then people will have a higher commitment into continuing with our plan.
Helen Murdoch's going to talk about our learning management system.
So we have a learning management system, which means that it isn't just, and it's called NEO. And NEO is not just a grade book, but it's a grade book. You can do online assignments. Every kid has a login, and we're trying to get all their parents logins so their parents can see their grades online. They're updated. As soon as a teacher puts a grade in, parents can see the grades. They can see the assignments that the teachers give. They can put online resources in there, video clips embed right into NEO, which is really nice because they don't have to go to YouTube to watch a video where there might be ads and other things that we don't want them to see. Google Docs can embed right into NEO. So it's sort of a one-stop shop. We also have PLCs that are working within NEO. They post resources. They do their notes from their meetings in NEO. And I think it's the 6th grade, is the whole district PLC is working within NEO. And we're using it from grades 4 through 12 at all the schools. Almost all the schools have 4th grade, I think, at this point. So yeah, so it's one of those things that kids are really getting used to using it and getting very savvy online.
One second, please. It is after 4 o'clock. If anybody has to leave, don't be embarrassed. We'll go for a few more minutes, but if you have to leave, go ahead.
I have just a couple more minutes. I'll blow through as fast. I have a lot to say about NEO, but I'll skip it. So one of the questions that we were struggling with is, again, about devices. And we really believe that going back to kind of our key driving principle, the idea that we need to get teachers to act differently in order to think differently. We really love Chromebooks. Chromebooks are great, but we believe that they are a mobile version of what we've always had, which are labs. The same form factor, do the same things basically, and so we have decided that iPads really allow us to do more creative things in the classroom. Here's our device inventory. So you can see we have a lot of Chromebooks and a lot of iPads. And I was going to talk also briefly about our pilot schools, our iPad pilot, but I think I will skip that and take questions.
Thank you. Questions? Ms. Parker?
And again, because I don't have things memorized, I know that there's actually a big iLearn training coming up, an Apple workshop coming up. Can you give us information about that? Because I think that's open to everybody in the South Coast.
It's open to everyone. We're very excited. It's going to be a huge, we're calling it the iLearn Summit. It's on October 23rd and 24th. We have an incredible guest speaker who is in charge of the leader of innovation and teaching at the Keck Medical School at USC, Dr. Gash, the greatest university on earth. And we have trainers from all over the state coming, along with our own district trainers. And if you go to our website, you can register for it.
We hope we get Goleta Union teachers attending.
Okay. Other questions? Yes.
Good to see you, Todd.
Good to see you. I want to ask you about your kids when we're done.
It's been a while. We all know that technology for technology's sake is not what we're here for. We want to use it to help kids learn. So I'm wondering if you could give us a few examples of how Chromebooks or iPads have kind of improved the way kids are learning.
Yeah, I could, but I'd rather have teachers do it. So I'm going to turn it over to Amy. Do you want to start, and then Dave?
Well, I'm an English teacher, so writing is my passion, and I've really felt successful with having students create blogs. I think it improves their writing, and I'll tell you why. They are not just writing for me. They have a public audience. They need to make it right. They don't want to look foolish in front of their peers, and they can respond back to each other and have a conversation, and their parents can then come in and say and respond to their own child and other kids' blogs. For me, that has been transformative for their learning.
Cool.
I walked into a kindergarten, and a kindergarten teacher asked me the same question: how are we going to use technology, not just for technology's sake? And I said, Skype. You know, they work with local communities in history class. They can now Skype a fire station where they are actually showing them the different devices, the fire engine, and the kids can interactively ask questions. They can visually see how it works while they're watching it. This is a way of learning that was never possible before. Interacting, asking asking questions, getting visuals. So this is how you're not using technology just for technology's sake, but as a new form of learning.
I actually am sad I'm not in the classroom. I was thinking that when the Ferguson incident happened, I would have used Skype instead of sitting and trying to figure out what was going on in Ferguson. I would have Skyped with kids at a high school in Ferguson with my students and asked them, hey, what is life really like there? What is your interactions really like? What's exciting to me about technology is that teachers don't have an excuse anymore for not teaching multiple perspectives. And to me, that's the real excitement power. That's really excites me about the power of it. Yeah.
Anybody else? I know we could spend another long time
I
on
could talk
technology,
forever.
and you know how important it is to everybody. So I thank you very much for all that you're doing in the field of technology, both in our district and in Goleta, because in reading the Goleta history and where they're going to go, it's tremendous. So we appreciate it very much. Anything else for the good of the group? Anybody have any ideas of, if we have another meeting like this, what you would like to know? What you'd like to have covered? Any thoughts? I'm sure you all can talk to your superintendents and let him know, but if there's anything burning that you want to hear about, we can add it to the agenda right now for another meeting. Looks like everything's solved. We don't need anything more. Okay, but we'll have another meeting. Thank you very much, both superintendents. Thank you.